Okay, so let's take it from there.
Yeah, we've got that. Brilliant.
Wonderful. That's a great start there. That's hopefully should be a little bit improved for you there. So the name of tonight's session, as you can see, is Understanding and Exploring Bullying for Parents. And I am going to pop you straight onto a little video, which will tell you a bit more about what we do at our charity and how possibly we can help you. I will be ending the session as well with some more details about how you can get in touch if you need any further support or you've got further questions. So here we go.
Anyone of any age can be a bully or suffer bullying, and it can have a devastating effect on emotional well-being and mental
Sorry, it seems to have glitched.
health. Bullying is a widespread, often silent issue, and it's not going away. Over 50% of young people in the UK report being bullied, and 3 in 10 employees report suffering workplace bullying at some point in their lives. Here at BulliesOut, we're dedicated to helping people address bullying in schools and workplaces. We understand that it can be really hard to know how to deal with bullying, but we believe that with the right support and guidance, everyone can stand up, speak out and make a difference. We're proud to offer workshops, training, projects and campaigns that aim to reduce bullying in schools and workplaces. We raise awareness of the difference between healthy conflict and bullying, to help people learn about the hidden damage bullying causes, to educate people in schools and workplaces about different types of bullying, how to spot when it's happening, and what strategies can help to address bullying behaviour. Most of all, we take bullying seriously, so that everyone will recognise why we need to act and why we simply can't stand by. If we're to break the bullying cycle, we need to create a culture of acceptance, tolerance and respectful relationships in our schools and workplaces, so that young people and adults will feel empowered to stand up and say no to bullying, and everyone will have access to the support they need to feel confident and thrive.
Hey, what really stands out for me there quite often, and the children in school and people in workplaces report the same thing, is the high statistic that we have of people that are actually report being bullied. So 50% of school children at some point report having experienced bullying. Personally, I have a feeling that those numbers could even potentially be higher. We certainly know that people and children with protected characteristics are sometimes more vulnerable to bullying. So those are just our reported numbers. So an overview of today. We are understanding and exploring bullying. So we're hoping today that we will develop a clear understanding of bullying behaviours, identify warning signs, explore ways to support a child who is bullied and who displays bullying behaviour. And as we'll discover later, that is equally important to how we deal with a child that is actually experiencing bullying, and understand a little bit more about working with the school in order to support our children. Okay. So we do know that bullying behaviour can have a devastating impact on people's health, mental health, emotional health, and then ultimately their well-being. The actual definition of bullying is a repeated behaviour which is intended to hurt someone verbally, emotionally, or physically. And as you can see there, we've got 4 types of bullying behaviour: physical, verbal, emotional, and online. Physical, obviously, the one that tends to spring to people's minds first, with the hitting, kicking, punching, pushing, slapping, or any other type of physical sort of impact that they might have on someone. But we also know that other forms of bullying can have an equally detrimental effect on people's health and well-being. Verbal, so name calling, nasty comments, teasing, making threats, that sort of typical schoolyard behaviour that might spring to mind. We also know that emotional bullying, so exclusion, leaving out of social groups, games, etc., not picking people for teams when it comes to sports and things like that, spreading rumours about someone, and even blackmailing and gossiping behind people's back. These days, online bullying is becoming an increasing problem as well. And that obviously includes things like nasty emails and messages, inappropriate posts on social media, online threats. And again, exclusion can have an impact here as well. So where children are left out from online games or forums, or nasty comments are sort of set up online. It's a big issue these days, and slightly more difficult to combat because sometimes the people that perpetrate it have that screen to hide behind, so there is a level of anonymity. However, there are ways that we can still tackle this. So hopefully we'll cover some of those more positive aspects a little bit later. All right, so as you can see here with some statistics, they are a little bit shocking, as we've already addressed. 51% of young people report being bullied, but at least once per month. So that is a shocking amount of children. I always say to the class of children, I say, imagine yourself split in half and half of all your friends are experiencing this with some regularity. It can be quite a shocking statistic. 34% of children or young people report being bullied every week. 54% are bullied online. So we believe, obviously, those statistics need to come down. Hence, we work so hard in schools and workplaces to help address some of these issues. And it is devastating and has long-term effects on those that experience it. So it's not just in the short term, but we know that it can impact people's long-term health and well-being. Statistics also show that 50% of children and young people have been physically bullied, 29% by a close friend. And at this point, I would always question with the children whether that person is actually a friend if they're carrying out those behaviours. We do like to educate around empowerment and speaking up and giving children a voice. We do know that when children have a level of control about dealing with the bullying behaviour, that it helps them to overcome some of the negative side effects. 59% of children are bullied by a classmate, 33% by someone at school they didn't know. So this is interesting. Obviously, we have to support children to navigate the consequences of being bullied. It can sometimes be very difficult for them where the perpetrator is in the same class as them every day, and it is something that needs to be addressed sensitively by people that work with the children and, of course, the parents as well. Unfortunately, these statistics have led to 50% of young people feeling depressed, 45% feeling anxious, 21% of children have truanted from school, 28% have self-harmed, and 34% have had suicidal thoughts. So those are quite difficult things for us to think about and contemplate. 11% of children and young people have attempted suicide due to bullying. This is something that we're particularly conscious of now, especially post-COVID. These statistics are obviously very alarming, particularly when we're looking at secondary schools and colleges. This is something that we really believe has to change, and it has to come from the system up. So there are different people involved in the bullying cycle. We know that people who are bullied can experience all of these bullet points that you can see here on the screen. And we believe that gone are the days that it's acceptable to say that bullying is a rite of passage. Kids are being kids, or it's part of growing up. We certainly don't believe those are acceptable states of mind. Bullying is a serious threat to our youth today. And we do have significant research to suggest that bullying does have a devastating impact on people, as you can see from our previous slide. It can also affect people's mental health well into their adulthood and continue to have an impact unless we actually address what's at the bottom of it. We know that people who are bullied face barriers to learning. They may have an inability to concentrate, miss school altogether, self-harm, experience anxiety, loneliness and isolation, and even depression. Their self-esteem, confidence is affected. They may lack those quality friendships. They have an increased sense of vulnerability, which can make them very wary or suspicious. There is an increased risk of alcohol or substance misuse later in life, and also a higher risk of suicide. Not only does the person that is experiencing bullying become impacted by those behaviours, but the person displaying the bullying behaviour is often experiencing emotional or mental they're suffering themselves, is what I'm trying to say. They can also suffer from poor school performance. For example, they might miss school due to suspensions if they've been making bullying a repeated behaviour. They might also have an increased truancy risk, difficulty maintaining social relationships, and difficulty managing feelings. So we would always say, if your child is displaying any of these behaviours, I always say there are no excuses for bullying, but there are certainly reasons for it. So the reasons need to be explored for the person that is bullying just as much as the person that is being bullied. Many sufferers of bullying can suffer from confidence and feel bad about themselves. And those negative consequences in a child's life, if they don't have effective intervention, that behaviour is likely to continue on into adulthood. And so those people are likely to suffer from adverse mental health issues, risk of spousal or child abuse, risk of antisocial behaviour, increased risk of alcohol or substance misuse, and possibly affect their education and employment possibilities as well. So it's really important for us to remember that the person is demonstrating bullying behaviour may have experienced some form of bullying or difficulty or trauma in their life as well. So as we can see, those devastating effects can last well into adulthood and have a truly life-changing effect on the person. We tend to sometimes forget about somebody called the bystander. So this is someone that observes or knows that the bullying is happening. Sometimes the bystanders might feel powerless to do anything about it. And we will be covering some ways in which people can help turn that cycle around. So if somebody has witnessed bullying behaviour, some bystanders begin to worry that they'll be bullied next. So there is a fear of speaking up or supporting in case that they're the next ones. They're afraid to say anything because they might feel embarrassed or ridiculed. And sometimes they're also afraid that they might say the wrong thing, so that bullying might get worse. There are real feelings of guilt. So if somebody is observing bullying, they have to deal with their own feelings of guilt about what to say or what not to say if they've not done anything, being too afraid to step in. So this can cause quite a lot of anxiety for the friends around people who are being bullied. Some bystanders can also be plagued by uncertainty. So they see the bullying behaviour, they know that it's wrong, but they really just don't have the tool set or the knowledge to know what to do or who to turn to. So again, we do work quite closely with schools and children to help support them through and hopefully give them some really good interpersonal skills. We'll talk later on about how we develop our personal skills in order to break the bullying cycle. Bystanders can also feel wary of others. So they might feel slow to respond. They're waiting to see what other people do first. So a lot of bystanders might stand by and they could be sitting on the fence. So if they are seeing a group of people intervening and supporting, they might then go and join in. However, they also might observe the opposite, where if there is a few people carrying out the bullying behaviour, they might decide to go with them. So it can cause that sort of division of thought. The approach avoidance in conflict, this occurs when there is a real desire to help with the situation, But there is also that sort of torn feeling that I said there, that they don't want to be involved in the situation. They want to make it all go away, and it can shut children down, basically. So when it comes to bullying, young people can feel that guilt for not helping, and yet also feel scared at the same time. So part of our work here is also to support the bystander in this situation, and for us as parents or educators to understand how bullying can impact a whole circle of people. So I'm very wary that I'm rabbiting on there. Is there any questions or comments so far?
Thank you. Definitely not rabbiting on. It's, I mean, it's not really it's not really a question. It's just they commented that 11% attempting suicide is incredible.
It's shocking, isn't it? It actually is one of those things that gives you the prickles up your spine when you think proportionately what number of children that represents in our country today. And I truly believe that the tools that we hopefully introduce to children, parents, educators, a whole range of people, the more people that understand this issue and understand the signs and the practices, things that we can all do to help improve the situation, the better. And I believe it has to start ground up. And I always say to people, if you can do one thing, just be kind, you know. And it's one of those red flag situations, isn't it, where if we're noticing some of these behaviors, let's get it out, let's talk about it, and let's help turn those figures around, essentially, because they are devastating.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's actually, well, it's one of the reasons we were keen to have this event this week is because it's Children's Mental Health Week.
It is,
well.
Absolutely.
Just shows, yes. But yes, not a question, but yeah, just a
no, that's a really, no, thank you for flagging that up, because you know that is one of the things that drives us to continue to do what we do. And it would be nice if our charity didn't have to exist one day, wouldn't it, and that we could all get this right. So this is a very sort of common question by a lot of parents, and you know, something that we all worry about with our children going to school. We don't know everything that happens all day long. They often come home and you say, what have you done today? Nothing. Done nothing. Nobody said anything. It's very difficult sometimes, isn't it, to know what's happening in that school environment when we let them go in the morning. So there are some signs. It's important to recognize that these signs might not just be due to bullying. They can indicate other things as well, but it certainly opens up our avenue for exploration, so a discussion with our child or school staff. So some of the things that children might do is make excuses to miss school. So headaches, stomach complaints, etc., illnesses. They might miss school altogether, so there might be some skipping school, going truant. Schoolwork not up to the usual standards, so the teachers might report that whatever the work they normally do, their standards are slipping. They might come home with items missing or damaged if it's physical bullying. They might show signs of being in a fight. They might become quite withdrawn and take themselves away to bed earlier than usual. They might not be able to sleep. You might notice changes in mood, so there might be mood swings, or they might become more quiet and withdrawn than normal, or more angry than normal. They might be crying for no known reason. There may be a lack of confidence, anxiety, depression, loneliness, bedwetting. It says mainly younger children, but we do know that some older children that have previously had no issues can sort of revert back to younger behaviours and might start wetting the bed again if they become overly anxious. There could be a change in eating habits. They could become insecure or afraid. And if they are older children, it might be that they are constantly checking their phone. That's a real telltale sign. I know children, teenagers, everyone has a phone these days. And I always say is the potential to have a bully in our pocket, that we carry it with us everywhere. And even if we take the children through the right stages of reporting the bullying, there is still a temptation, and because the children are so and young people are so wired to their phone, they need to keep checking to see if that bullying is still happening. So let's crack on. So why do people display bullying behavior? There are lots and lots of reasons to why people display bullying behavior. For some, it can be feelings of rejection, so they are addressing an issue that they've experienced themselves. Others are being or have been bullied in the past themselves. Someone who displays bullying behavior could be predatory and opportunistic. So they might just pick on someone who's in the wrong place at the wrong time. What we do know, though, typically bullies choose their person with a perceived imbalance of power. So they may see themselves as more powerful, either physically, mentally, emotionally. Their social status is quite a complex and genuine reason for people to bully. It might be someone that is good at schoolwork, so they are known for being the brain box, or exceeding in a particular subject. They might be good at a particular sport or job, or excel in some other area. So being popular with people can also give someone a reason to bully someone. So, for example, their peers, colleagues, customers, other children in school who are really popular. More than things, that the person that's displaying the bullying behavior fears being seen, fears that exposure of his or her own inadequacy, should I say. Deep down, bullies have low self-esteem, low confidence, and they fear that they are incompetent. So another person's presence, who appears to be more popular or more competent than themselves, can fuel their own fears about their own inadequacies. So it can cause them to display those bullying behaviors. Having at least one vulnerability that can be exploited. So we do know that children with SEN are particularly vulnerable to being bullied. It might be that someone refuses to join into an established clique. It might be someone that just shows independence of thought or deed, and therefore poses a threat to the person who's bullying. As we've already discussed, they're being bullied themselves. This isn't limited just to the school environment. It could be somebody at home, a parent, a relative, a caregiver. It can be anybody. And also we have to be mindful, of course, of abuse as well. That is obviously another reason why somebody might display those behaviours. Jealousy is also a large proportion of why people bully, for all sorts of reasons. You pick something to be jealous of, and somebody will find it. So I think that's covered everything. Yeah, as I said earlier, I truly believe, although we're looking at many, sometimes multifaceted reasons why people display bullying behavior, I would still say there are not excuses. When it comes to later on in life, if people are adults and displaying bullying behavior, unless there is some sort of accountability and recognition of their behaviors, it's very difficult to address. So that early intervention is really important. So now we're looking at the bullying cycle, and we will discuss a little bit about the different parts that are part of that cycle. Most incidences of bullying, we have the person who bullies, so we can see them at the top there at point A. And the person who is bullied, so we've got those in the center of our circle here. So I'm going to sort of move around and explain a little bit about everyone's part here. So we've got the bully at the top. So they're the ones that start the bullying behavior and plays an active part. And it could be any one of those types of bullying that we looked at earlier, from physical, emotional, online and verbal. And then we come round to the follower there. So the follower is person who likes to act a bit like a sidekick to the bully. So they might encourage the bullying and join in with the bullying, although they might not necessarily start it. They will side with the bully and continue on that behavior. Next down, we have the supporter or the passive bully. So these are people who support the bullying and they might take part, but they seem to enjoy it and they might observe it, but they might not join in quite as much. Then we come round to our disengaged onlooker. So I've missed out the passive supporter, possible bully there, haven't I? Yeah. So these people here are the ones that are getting enjoyment out of it, but possibly don't want to join in. So there's a lot of fear for that person. They might be actually afraid of the bully themselves, so they don't want to stand up. And so instead they take that more active role and support it. Then we come round to our disengaged onlooker. So that is the person that might use a variety of reasons not to intervene. So they might say that they are not feeling well that day, or that they don't want to take sides, or they don't want to cause any trouble. There's lots and lots of reasons why that person again is sort of held in that place of fear, and they're more in denial, so they don't really want to admit that it's happening because they don't want to have to do anything about it because of how they feel that fear. Then we've got the passive defender. So this is someone who doesn't like the bullying, but again, doesn't do anything to help. And again, this is usually because of fear. It could also be sometimes the bully will make threats to people around them and say, well, if you do it, then I'm going to get you as well. There's sort of that real sort of control sort of element going on with the bully. And then finally, we come to the defender. So this is the person that we would all like to encourage to step up and say something. Now, when I say step up, I don't necessarily mean intervene. The children at school all think that means they should get their superhero capes on and jump in. But obviously, we don't encourage children to risk their own health and well-being whilst doing something about the bullying. So we're not asking them to put themselves in danger, and instead we would say to them, go and get some help from an adult, find something around, and report the bullying. There are safer ways to intervene rather than certainly when there's a physical element of bullying going on. Okay, so that's the bullying cycle, and again, it's a useful tool for children to have a look at and consider where they might fall in that bullying cycle. And very often people will find that they have taken on different roles at different times and at different parts of their life. And it's just to be, again, showing awareness of how our role can impact the whole cycle of bullying. So I've got a little thinking job for you to do now with our participants. So we've got a list of do's and don'ts here. If you have got a piece of paper, feel free to scribble down what you think might be a do and what might be a don't. If not, just have a little look over that list and see how you think would be an appropriate way for you to respond as a parent. What would be good things to do and what wouldn't be such a good idea? So the do's and don'ts of responding to bullying behavior. Okay. So I'm not going to be marking you or anything. There's no judgment. Sometimes this brings up questions, but I shall go through our reasons. The ones with the ticks are obviously the do's. And right at the top there, we've got a do not, confronting the other child's parents. I think we've all witnessed people, haven't we, that can sometimes justifiably feel like they want to go steaming up to the other parent and confront directly. This can particularly happen if there has been sort of a failed response, maybe from the educational setting, or they feel that they haven't got the support that they need. Obviously, bullying is a highly emotive subject for a lot of people, and we can get very, very protective of our children. Confronting the other child's parents, however, can't be encouraged because it can obviously inflame the situation. It can cause negative feelings to arise in the other parents, and they might not necessarily be very receptive to hearing from you what's been happening. It rarely does it end in a positive way, and can make the situation worse. There are certain circumstances where schools or other sort of institutions are able to perhaps mediate some conversations, but that certainly shouldn't be parent-led, and it's not to be encouraged confronting directly. So number 2, encouraging your child to talk and to listen. It sounds absolutely fundamental, and it is. It's really, really important. And I would say, as a background to that, talk to your child anyway, even if they don't really want to talk about their school day, which they often don't, but create that environment where you know that your child has, they feel they have a voice, and they're able to share with you without judgment. Take them seriously. So if your child feels that they're being bullied, they probably are. And again, I say this to both children and adults: follow your gut. If something doesn't feel right, it's probably not. So one of the most important things that we can do as parents is to take them seriously, listen to them, and be totally present when they're actually telling us this information. Of course, it's a good idea to write things down later on, and I'll talk about that. But if they are actually disclosing bullying behaviour, it's really important that we're present, we listen, and we take them seriously. So leading on from that, obviously, is keeping calm and avoid doing anything irrational. So, and again, demonstrating to your child that you are keeping calm is going to help them in the long term too. We don't want them to become afraid of telling you that something's happening in the future if we react in an explosive manner, as tempting as it might be sometimes. And leading on again from that, then let them know that you will have to inform the school. Sometimes it might even go on to being a safeguarding issue as well. So it's really important that we share that issue with the school. So that leads us on to number 6 then, which is a do not. So don't demand to see the evidence of the bullying behaviour. So for example, if the child is telling you that they've been physically bullied, we shouldn't be saying to them, well, show me your bruises then, show me where your scratch marks are. It might cause them to clam up and close down and not share with us again in the future. So a do is to encourage your child to keep a diary of evidence. On that point, I will, and I'll come back to it at the end, but I will refer you to our website, because we do actually have some downloadable and printable sort of records that parents and children can use to record things. If we look in the school section, I'll come to it at the end, and everything you need to know will be on there. But we've got all sorts of resources that parents can utilise if their child is being bullied, including keeping a record or diary. So number 8, focus on your child's feelings. And this is really important. So if something is upsetting to them, whatever it might be, then we have to take that seriously. And again, allowing them that forum to talk about their feelings, how things are making them feel, and including them in the process. So where we're telling them that we have to go into school, ask them if, you know, what they would like to come out of that situation, so they can feel an element of control in steps moving forwards. So do contact the classes, the teachers, the child's class teacher. Let me get that round the right way. That should be your first port of call, clearly. and then on to the head teacher. And there is sort of that, those steps to follow through. If you don't feel that the class teacher is taking it seriously, go to the head teacher. If you don't think that the head teacher's taking it seriously, go to the governors. If they're not taking it seriously, then on to Ofsted and other sort of, but there is a protocol to follow to make sure that you've done all those steps. And again, it is advisable to ask the school if they'll keep a discreet eye on your child. And if you do have a name for the person that's perpetrating the bullying, obviously it's worth mentioning that so that the class teacher can sort of monitor what's going on between the children. Don't tell your child to delete their social media account or take away their mobile phone. This can really compound obviously this applies to slightly older children, although children in primary schools do have their phones with them as well. But it can compound their feelings of helplessness, and they might feel they have an element of control, and it might feel that we're taking that away from them, or that we don't trust them. There are ways that we can combat online bullying by reporting it to some social media platforms. And that's certainly with the online bullying bill that was passed in Parliament at the back end of last year has really helped sort of larger platforms to become more accountable for people reporting incidences of bullying. It used to be down to the individual to report it, but now with the new act that was passed in Parliament, those online social media accounts such as Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat are now much more accountable and responsible for making sure that behaviour is good on their accounts. So again, this one is one that we can all do, isn't it? Give our child extra warmth and reassurance that they are loved, that they are heard, that we will try to help them. You know your child best, so you are the one that will be able to give them the reassurance that they need. Do take your child to the GP if they are extremely distressed or complaining of pain or physical distress. That might mean that they need some extra support. And at this point herein as well, I will mention that we do actually offer free counselling sessions to children and adults that have suffered from bullying. So if you feel that your child needs some further support, please do check out our website, because we can hook you up with a absolutely wonderful counsellor, and we do peer mentoring as well. So that is something that's well worth taking into account. But yes, absolutely take them to the GP. And it also helps create a bit of a better picture sometimes, I find, for schools, if they know that the behaviour has become so severe that the child has needed medical intervention. Do not remove your child from school immediately, until the situation is resolved. Obviously, you need to have those conversations first. Sometimes removing the child from the situation could be more distressing to them than anything. So that's one that you need to talk closely to your child's education provider to find out how they're going to support them moving forwards. We don't want your child to suffer any further than they have done. In this, that your child changes school, again, this can be very confusing for them in a time that's already deeply upsetting. However, of course, I'm not going to say you mustn't do this. It's down to individual cases, but hopefully there'll be a whole list of things that you've tried before actually this happens. And if your child is in agreement with you and you feel it is right for your family, then that might be something that you will get to. But hopefully we'll look at, again, all the steps that we can take that will improve things so that they don't have to change school. It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because the person that suffers from the bullying is not the guilty one. However, if it is having such a deep detrimental effect on someone's health and well-being, we do have to sometimes consider those difficult options. And again, I'm going to pause for any questions or maybe comments.
Thank you, Abigail. Thank you. I do actually have a question. It might be quite a difficult one to answer, which I
challenging me on a Wednesday evening.
So what would be your I suppose not even an answer, just the thoughts on, say, if there was a situation where a child was being bullied, or other children may be displaying those bullying sort of factors to a child, but the child doesn't perhaps realise that, or if it's perhaps
Yeah.
they're in more defending the bullies and no, they're my friends, or there's this and
Yeah.
that, they're just joking, whether they're, you know, pretending or if they genuinely don't realise
Yeah.
that that's happening.
That
Where does that
that's
come in?
that is a difficult one. And we find that typically with many children who suffer from poor mental health, whether it's due to SEN, autism, you know, children that don't necessarily perceive things in the same way, or have such a deep insecurity and need for friends that they almost blank out the behavior, they don't recognize it. We do a lot of education around what is a toxic relationship, or what is, you know, a frenemy, some of the older children call it now, and what's a respectful relationship, what is a positive friendship. So we would focus on the characteristics, kind of look at it through a positive lens. It's important that we identify harmful behaviors or someone that isn't actually displaying a true friendship, but we like to look at it in a positive way and say, how would you like a friend to be? What does a good friendship feel like? How does it feel when people say good things to you? How does it feel when you share games with each other and are kind to each other? And we almost sort of, in the work that we do, we sort of split those into two bubbles and consider, and then again, I'm going to bring it back to the feelings. How are these things making you feel? So if somebody is calling you names every day, how does that really make you feel? There's no sort of short-term fix to that, because a lot of it is, again, about awareness, communication. And again, if you as a parent are noticing these things happening, really then it's in your hands, isn't it, to obviously keep that door of communication open with your child, but also to explain and express those concerns to the child's caregiver and school. That's a really crucial step, because again, the teachers might not always have an awareness that it is happening. Bullying can slip under the radar, particularly if it's emotional bullying. It might not be noticed, because if you're out there on the playground or in the classroom, you might not actually notice some of those more subtle behaviors. So yeah, that's a short answer to something that we could really, really unpack. It's like opening it. But yeah, focusing on the positives and what we want a good friendship to feel like, and talking to educators is really, really important.
Thank you. So a lot of the do's and don'ts would be very much the same, I would imagine, in that situation. As you
Yes,
said, so speak to the teacher, the head teacher, so perhaps even not more so, but I suppose especially in that situation, because as you say, it may be that the adults in the rooms or in the playgrounds aren't actually as aware if it appears that it's friendly.
Yeah, and it's really important that we don't go in all guns blazing going, my child's told me this, my child's told me that, because immediately you're going to get people on the back foot. Yes, it is their responsibility to look after our children. They have a duty of care. Very calm demeanor is really important, and it's difficult, particularly if we feel that our child isn't recognizing it and they're in a vulnerable position, and we can see it ourselves. That can be quite upsetting as a parent to deal with. So yeah, I would absolutely encourage that calm approach, jotting down your concerns and addressing them, but in a non-inflammatory way.
Thank you. And this is likely a question you've heard a lot, unfortunately, but what sort of what things can someone do if they're doing all these things, let's say the school, if they're just not responding, parents don't want to know, they're just hitting the brick wall, like what is that next?
I have got a few more slides to go on the sorts of things that you can do, but in terms of the chain of command, which I believe you're referring to there, obviously the first step is always to talk to the child's teacher. That's got to be your first step. And then if you've had a meeting with them, I would certainly be logging everything. My biggest recommendation is to log everything. So get yourself a notepad or a file, whatever you need to do, and just log everything, dates, times, what people have said, what people have done. And the outcomes, I would be expecting from a school, from the teacher, some sort of action plan. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. Let's meet again on such and such a date. Make it measurable. So we'll meet again and we'll discuss how things are going, so that there is some sort of long-term moving plan going forwards. If you feel that the class teacher has not taken you seriously, your next chain of command is obviously the head teacher. But at least you can then say, I've done this, I've tried this, I've logged this, this is what we've done. I still feel that my child is vulnerable, that this is still happening. What else can we do? And again, same steps with the head teacher. Everything should be logged. He or she should be telling you what steps the school are going to take and reassuring you, and making sure that they're touching base with you. Again, if that step's not working, then it's the school governors. So you would write to the chair of governors in the school, or trustees if it's an academy, and express your concerns. Talk about how you've addressed it with the school and spoken to the school. And above that, it would naturally, your natural next step would be to go to Ofsted and complain that you've not been listened to on all those reasons. There are, you know, if a parent was in that situation, I would encourage them to reach out to us, certainly give us a ring, look to one of, you know, get in touch with us, and we can sort of help point you in the right direction. We have a resource list on our website of letters, standard letters, that parents can write to support their case. So if you're stuck for what you want to say or how to say it, please do visit our website, because we've got lots and lots of resources on there that parents can utilise.
We'll certainly keep that in mind for any calls we get. Thank you.
Fabulous. Yeah.
And I'm really sorry, Abigail. Can I?
Hi, Amy. I could see you
question?
unmuted.
Sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
In terms of, I'm sorry if this comes up a bit later on. In terms
That's all right.
of the resources that you've got, do you have sort of resources that parents can maybe download or print and then share with their children to talk about, you know, what bullying is, what bullying looks like?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sort of in preemptive sort of thing, like Luke was saying, children may not recognise.
Yeah, there's all sorts. I would only encourage, because I could talk about so much that is on the website. It's very, very user friendly. There are lots of resources. There are things to download. There are some activities on there. I would encourage parents not only to look at the parent section, but look at the school section as well, because there's some activities on there that children can do. There are some books and things stories that are particularly nice for younger children. And we use some of those in our workshops, but sort of they're all mentioned on the website as well. So that there are all sorts of things. The most sort of useful things, I think, are perhaps the diary sort of records that parents can download. And as I said, letters. But yeah, there's all sorts of other resources and what bullying looks like and all that sort of thing on there as well, for sure. Right, I'll pop on. Otherwise you'll be hearing me all night, because I don't shut up when I start. So I'll crack on.
Lovely, thank you.
It's all appreciated. Don't worry, thank you.
Right.
We'll show up and let you talk.
Fabulous. So it's important, obviously, for us to realise that there is a difference between bullying and conflict. And this is where, and I think, Amy, yours was and Luke, your question was a really good one, around where children don't necessarily realise what's bullying and what isn't, because there is a certain amount of conflict. And I'm hesitant to use the word normal, because in my world, any sort of unpleasant behaviour is just, it shouldn't be tolerated. However, there is a difference between conflict and bullying, and where conflict turns into bullying. So although I say to children, there's a difference between conflict and bullying, those people who often display conflicting behaviours, that perhaps waves a little bit of a red flag. And it's like in the workplace, when we talk about people who display abrasive behaviour, although they might not be directing it at you, it's something that you have to think about, whether this is somebody that I want in my sort of friendship group, as it were. So the difference between conflict and bullying. Conflict is a disagreement or difference of opinion. It is an inevitable part of group dynamics. equal power between those involved. It's usually an isolated or occasional incident, and all those involved make an effort to resolve the situation. So that's a really key thing that I point out when we're working with children, is that, is the other person willing to try and resolve this, to work with you? Can they understand how their behaviours might have upset you? Whereas somebody that bullies, their behaviours are based on that imbalance of power that we spoke about earlier. Maybe that person sees them as physically stronger, more intelligent. Maybe they think that they have some sort of social status over someone else, and there is a perceived imbalance of power. There is an intent to harm. And I always use the word on purpose a little bit lightly, because that doesn't mean that we should put up with it if it's continuing to happen, and the other person saying, oh, it's not on purpose, I didn't mean it. That doesn't mean that that behavior should be tolerated or go unreported. If it happens repeatedly, and that can be anything from once a week, once a month, to every day, to every lunchtime, whatever it is, if it's happening repeatedly over a pattern, or a pattern of timings, then that becomes bullying. It causes serious physical or emotional harm. The person does not stop when they're asked to, and anything that we see on that list there should always be reported. And by reported, we say to children, find a trusted adult, know who your trusted adults are, those people that listen to you, whether it's a TA, a teacher, the head teacher, a dinner supervisor. At home, who's that person going to be? Is it a parent, a grandparent, a carer, an aunt, an uncle? Have people in your mind, all the places that you go, who you know you can trust. And I also ask children to consider, if you go to sports clubs or social clubs after school, who are your trusted adults there? Those are the people that you turn to, and you tell them that you are experiencing these behaviours. So talking with your child who's been bullied is very important, as we alluded to earlier. It's important that we choose a quiet and comfortable space, a safe environment, somewhere where you know your child is going to feel relaxed and open and able to express themselves. So that expression is really, really important. And again, I think, as you spoke about earlier, Luke, if they haven't been aware, and then suddenly the pennies start to drop, it can be quite a traumatic experience for children when they suddenly realise those people around them perhaps really are not their friends, and they're actually being really unkind to them. So that safe environment is really important, and for them to know that we are here to listen and support. And that calm and empathetic approach is super important, and being composed and calm during the conversation. As much as we would like to fly off the handle and go, right, I'm going to go and get that Jimmy's parents, can we maintain our own composure so that the child sees that we are able to deal with it in a calm manner? So again, it encourages them to feel safe and that they can trust you. They themselves are going to be feeling some really big emotions. So we need to show that we can imagine that it's really tough for them, that we can appreciate how much they are struggling to deal with the situation, and that we understand where they're coming from. Again, it's important to remember that we need to ask lots of open-ended questions. The temptation is to ask closed questions where children can perhaps just give one-word answers of yes or no. But if we ask open-ended questions, again, it encourages that flow of conversation and true expression from the child's perspective, makes it very child-centered. For instance, can you tell me more about what's been happening? How are you feeling when this is happening to you? That sort of question. We also avoid blaming questions. For example, why haven't you done something about it before? Or why didn't you tell your teacher? At that particular moment in time, your child's already feeling very vulnerable, and they need supportive language rather than too many questions coming from the parent. And lastly, on that particular slide, we've got validating their feelings. So allowing them to know that from what they've experienced, how they're feeling is totally normal and valid. It can be extremely, extremely distressing for a child to experience these things, let alone then have to open up and talk about it. It can suddenly feel like they're revisiting, or again, and we sort of said this earlier, opening that can of worms. it's like sometimes you'll find that the floodgates open. And certainly for them to know that it's okay to feel upset or angry about this. It's all right for you to feel these feelings, but now we're going to do something about it. So it's validating them, it's supporting them, and that leads us really nicely into discussing strategies. So it's okay to feel these feelings, but we need to change it. We need to make it better. So I'm going to support you in that. Talk to the child about possible strategies on how they can handle a situation. And again, as we've already spoken about earlier, talking to a teacher and seeking support from friends. It's actually really underestimated, but we know children that have someone that they can talk to helps them to feel supported and better about a conversation, better about their experiences. I think we as adults all know that a nice cup of tea and a coffee and a chat with a friend, and I'm not belittling their situation, but can certainly make you feel nurtured and supported. And sometimes those friends are the ones that give us the courage to actually take action and say, I'm going to be there for you. You need to do something about this. So encouraging them to seek support from friends, trusted adults, trusted peer groups. And also in that reporting part of the bullying behaviour, making sure that your child is part of that and that they don't feel excluded from it. It can sometimes add to their anxiety if we don't always inform them about what's going on. Whereas if we report back and said, well, I had a word with Mrs. Cook, whoever the teacher is, and this is what we're going to do. And encouraging the child's teacher, obviously, to talk to the child as well and talk about the strategies that they can use in the classroom so that they feel safe. And again, we like to encourage the word assertive rather than confrontational. So standing your ground, holding your power and saying, no, I deserve better. I need this to happen. In order for me to move forwards, I would like to see this, this and this, and allowing the child to have a voice. And this will help to reinforce their self-esteem, which you can see here at point 7. So those conversations and reminders about their strengths and positive qualities, that it's not their fault. And the bullying certainly is not a reflection of them as a person. That is a really key point, actually, that I haven't yet said, that to tell the child that's who's experiencing the bullying that it's not their fault. We know from our studies that bullying can happen to anybody, to people who consider themselves strong and resilient, to those people who have won awards, who are singers, who are actors. It can happen to a whole variety of people. So there is nothing intrinsically wrong with you as a person if you have experienced bullying. The fault does lie entirely in the bully's lap. So you can have conversations about their abilities, their achievements, why you love them so much, what makes them a good friend, and why you're so proud of them for opening up and telling you about those experiences, and how happy you are that they have shared their thoughts so that they feel comforted that they've taken the right step in telling you. And again, involving the school, I think we've spoken about this rather a lot. Nothing can change unless we report what's happening. Parents may take, oh, well, nothing's going to happen anyway, nothing's going to change, but we have to try. We have to do the right steps in order to achieve the outcome that is right for us and for our children. There might be school counsellors. A lot of schools nowadays have counsellors within school, particularly off the back of COVID. There's lots of mental well-being health practitioners in schools now. So the school may actually have a counsellor which can support. If not, obviously do look at our website again, and we are available to give counselling sessions to children. All the details of the bullying behaviour should be shared. And again, that's where your log or your diary or your notation of what your child has said and experienced is really important, so you can report back with some clarity. And again, that working together to find a solution. So there should be some sort of action plan that the school will follow through with you in order to reach resolution. And again, it's really important that we stay calm. The last thing we want to do is sort of close those lines of communication where the teachers don't feel that they want to communicate, because it's really important, obviously, that we monitor progress. And last of all, on this particular page, teaching resilience. I truly believe that if we raise a nation of empowered, resilient beings, then bullying would begin to fade away. People who display bullying behaviours clearly have issues of self-esteem and self-worth themselves, because if they felt good about themselves, they wouldn't feel the need to belittle others in order to make themselves feel better, which is essentially what bullying behaviour is. It's someone trying to take someone else down so that they feel better themselves. And also it encourages us, it helps us to stand up for what we believe is right for ourselves and for others. We can talk about all the brilliant ways in which they've dealt with difficult situations. It might be some mindfulness activities can really support your child. There are lots and lots of things online now that you can access, so I'm not even going to start to talk about that, but there are lots of deep breathing exercises, all sorts of things, children's yoga. Oh, I could go off on one now because this is my thing, but I'm not going to go on too much. Even just engaging children in activities that they enjoy, arts and crafts, sports, whatever it is that encourages that child to really reflect on what makes them them and why they are proud to be them, and supports their resilience and well-being. Okay, and so lastly, on dealing with the situation, monitoring and follow-up, as I have said, is particularly important. So you as a parent need to check in with your child and see how they're going. It might be that the school is telling you one thing and saying that they're dealing with it, but you might get a slightly different picture from your child who maybe still feels in that place of fear or doesn't feel safe, or maybe there are still some incidences going on, which is equally important, obviously, for you to go back to the school and talk about. And last of all, seek professional help if needed. We know that bullying behaviour can have severe emotional consequences, which are not to be taken lightly. So that's why I'm so happy to be here talking tonight, because I don't want anyone to have to continue to suffer from all those things that we've spoken about earlier. As I said, our counselling service is free. Or you might want to seek some further help from mental health professional. GP is a good port of call. And there are lots of specialist agencies that can support your child. And as a final reminder, and I think we have boosted this point home, that maintenance of open communication and allowing your child to express themselves freely, and knowing that they're being supported and listened and heard and held, super, super important. So there's our little sort of bullet point list of tips on how you can engage with the school, which we've covered over the last few slides. So arrange a meeting with your child's teacher. If you're nervous about attending the school, ask a friend or family member to go with you. That's also really important. We can sometimes lose our thread a little bit where we're over emotional. Can we have someone alongside us that is able just to bring us back into balance a little bit? Give those specific examples of how your child is being bullied. So again, that record is really important. You can, of course, ask, and I haven't touched upon this yet, to see the school's anti-bullying policy and check that the school's anti-bullying procedures are actually being followed. Discussion of what action the teacher is going to take. Write down everything that I've said with measurable dates. And as a last proviso on there, results might not be instant, as we can appreciate if the person displaying the bullying behaviour has got issue themselves, those also might need exploring in a little bit more depth. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to put up with a continual bullying of our own child, just that we take one step at a time and we arrange those regular check-ins to see how things are going. And again, if that bullying behaviour continues, ask to see the head or head of year and follow the same process. Letter of complaint to the school, and again, those are on our website. If parents would like to download them or need them in the future, those are on the website. Director of Education, local authority / Ofsted, and those agencies that you can see below. Hopefully you can refer to those in the future. I hope you don't need them, I really do, but you never know. Excuse me, I just dropped my notes. Okay, so, and finally, which gives you all our sort of information. you've got our email address there for general inquiries. So you can pop that down if you're not sure about anything. And then our help and support, we've got the Mentors Online email address and our web address. And that is a plethora of information on there. I wouldn't know where to begin, but if you go to the parent section and to the school section, you'll also see different things about different types of bullying and what those behaviours are. So you've got that little bit of a checklist though to remind you of what to look out for, and all sorts of other amazing initiatives and things that we're involved in that support people who have experienced bullying on any part of that bullying cycle. And that concludes me, and I can't believe I've got through it cough-free. So any questions or comments before we sign off?
You've
Shall
said
stop
it now. You'll be coughing
Shall I
down
leave
the
that
questions
there?
and answers.
Shall I leave that there so people can see it, or do you want me to stop sharing?
Very happy if you just leave it on.
I'll leave it there.
If you'd like to. I've got another quick question, if you don't mind. Again, there might not be an answer to this
Go for
directly,
it.
but what would be your recommendation to someone who just simply doesn't, for work or even accessibility reasons or something like that, just can't get to these meetings, so they can't go and have a quick word with the teacher or the governors or anything like that?
Then definitely get it in writing. 100% get it in writing. It's worth a phone call to the school to see if they can discuss something over the phone, an email, a letter. Have that trail of evidence. As it is very difficult, isn't it? And hopefully the school also perhaps have some sort of online way of contacting you. I think during COVID, most schools adopted Microsoft Teams or some way of communicating with parents online if they preferred that way. But get in touch somehow. Like I said, an initial phone conversation and say, you know, I feel that this is something that I would prefer to discuss face to face. Maybe they can arrange an out of hours time to see you. Maybe a teacher can arrange to stay a little bit later one evening or pop in before work, see what the school can do to meet your needs, because they're the ones that should be supporting you.
Thank you. Yeah, I suppose it's about having that self advocacy for you and your
Yes,
family.
absolutely. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Right. Is there any more questions for Abigail? Can you either put them in the chat or unmute yourselves if there are any. I'll give it a second. Last chance.
If anyone does want to, obviously drop us, if they think of anything afterwards or something that they've gone away and really thought about, obviously drop us a line at BulliesOut and explore our website, and hopefully you'll find some answers on there. But we're more than happy to make communication if you need some answers.
We do have a question from Anthony. So let's see what happened. I think I understand. So what happens if a child is inadvertently bullying, but they think that they're defending someone? Is that right, Anthony? Yep. Okay. Yeah.
And again, awareness is everything, isn't it? Sometimes children don't actually understand that the behaviors that they are displaying are bullying behaviors and how it's making someone feel. So in that instance, there's a good amount of work to be done by the education, you know, the educators around that particular child, around the same sort of awareness about those that are being bullied. What constitutes bullying behavior? What feels good and what doesn't feel good? So in the case of the person that's doing that, you would argue that we need to develop empathy across all groups here. And although that person might feel that they're helping, it is useful then for the adults to say, I really appreciate your help. So we don't want them to feel undermined if they feel that they're helping the situation. But this is how it's making things worse. Can we find a way that you can come and tell me when something happens instead of you intervening? It really helps me when you come and talk to me. It really helps me when you tell me something that's upset you. So that person is probably feeling a bit inflamed. They might feel angry that the bullying has happened, and so they feel justified in their actions. However, it's down to the educators and the people that are around that child to say, actually, there are even better ways in which you can help. we don't want to carry on this cycle of bullying, because that in itself can start off a cycle of bullying.
That makes sense. Thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
Abigail. Any more questions for Abigail? This has been so useful.
That was a good one. That was a good question.
This has been so useful, honestly.
Great.
And
Great.
we'll be certainly letting everyone know about BulliesOut and the wonderful things.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed my talk tonight. And if there's anything that we can do in the future, I know that we would love to work with you. So yeah, do
absolutely.
keep in touch.
Yeah, us too. Well, as I said, thank you very much, Abigail.
Amazing.
We will be sharing the recording likely sometime next week. So if we
Wonderful.
do get inquiries or anything from that, we'll obviously let
Yeah,
you and
hot
your
off the
wonderful
press.
team know. But we do really appreciate you taking the time tonight.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, and to everyone else, keep an eye out for the future events. They're coming thick and fast. We've got a record number this year.
Amazing.
Face-to-face events. So yeah, keep looking. But yeah, hope you all have a nice evening. And this has been lovely. Yeah. So yeah, thank you everyone.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye everybody. Bye.
Bye.